Treasure Planet is an example of a show that had behind the scenes drama that caused it to not have the advertisement it deserved despite being an amazing film. It's one of my favorite films out there. Hi, welcome back to whatever this is. My name is Kaysa, I'm online, and today I'm going to be talking about animation. Now, specifically, the struggle of animation in the US in recent years. Before we continue, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I usually upload videos on Sunday nights, more like Sunday or Monday mornings actually. I also stream, so make sure to also follow me on TikTok and Twitch as well, so you know when I'm live. I'm trying to put a schedule together, so I'll be more frequent and consistent with that. But for now, I'm just glad that you're able to stop by this video and say hi. Recently, I've felt very exhausted trying to find good shows to watch, whether they be live action, animation, or even just YouTube videos. I feel like there's been like a lull and entertainment or quality entertainment. I've primarily been on YouTube and Twitch, so that actually may be the contributing factor to the fact that I can't find new shows that I actually want to watch. But I also watch review channels where they review mainly movies but also shows as well. And most recently, Snow White came out, and there's been a little bit of controversy about that film for various reasons. But the main thing that caught my eye is the fact that Disney keeps trying to do live action and it's just not working. It was not received well, and I refuse to go pay money in the theaters to go watch that. I'm not against going to the theaters. I refuse to pay money for Disney's live action movies. So I'm only solely relying on what the news is saying as well as what other creators say about the film. And they do come with receipts. The main thing I'll say is this: the gnomes. This has got me thinking about the animation realm in the US. Everything feels like it's getting further away from animation in the form that I understand it to be and value it to be. Let me establish how I view animation. Animation is a visual storytelling art form. It tells you a story that engages the viewer, usually in the form of entertainment. The art is also an expression of both the story and the prime creators of the story. Since that is my working definition of animation, I think the US has largely failed in maintaining that level of artistry and storytelling. A lot of points I'm going to go over may apply to different forms of media as well, and entertainment too, but I'm concentrating on animation right now. I boil everything down to just about 7 points that may contribute to my overall frustration with the current animation industry. Before I just get into that, I just have to comment on what I've heard, likely a small group of people actually saying, or just individuals just saying it just to, rage bait or something. It's the people who think animation cartoons are synonymous to toddlers. Those people who genuinely think that watching cartoons are only for children, that adults only watch live action. I personally always thought that is far more of a childish mentality to have. To me, it is the equivalent of saying I only drink out of wine glasses because that's what makes me an adult. You see how that doesn't make any sense? A wine glass is specific to wine for the various reasons, and the design of the glass itself plays a role in how the wine is supposed to be consumed. That is the same way for animation and cartoons for me. It is a specific format that can do things that live action cannot, and I'm going to be going over that in my points too. But to automatically just write off animation, cartoons, anime to be for other people for whatever random reason of rationale that you seem to have, that does not make sense, it's just beyond me. Like, do like what you like. If you prefer live action over animation, that's fine. There are people out there who genuinely don't like animation of any sort. I don't know why. We wouldn't have a lot to talk about, not even story wise, because there are some live action stories out there that just don't make sense, but probably would make a lot more sense if it was animated. In addition to that, there are also a lot of shows out there that were made with kids in mind are not what you would consider in modern day times kid friendly. Just there are plenty of shows I watched when I was younger that, you know, you would say like this may actually be a little bit too much for kids compared to what is being put out there now, which is a very diluted, very regulated, monitored version of animation and cartoons and entertainment for kids. And there is a large spectrum of that too, because kids have different age groups and different types of development levels and everything. But it is very different from what animation was in the past to what it is now. So my first point is this push for live action adaptations. It really is irritating to me because live action adaptations are far more difficult to convey what a cartoon is easily able to convey. And the biggest culprits that I know would be Disney and Netflix. Truly, because they keep missing the mark entirely. So Disney, because they keep taking the old established cartoon and animated sort of formats and stories that did super well, trying to get a cash grab in my opinion and resell it to a whole different generation, which has had its own version of controversies because it's not actually contributing to the story. They don't fully reimagine the story. They're doing it just solely for the purpose of, I mean, I guess it would just have to be a cash grab. On the other half, Netflix does it a lot from what I can remember of trying to do anime into live action, and they've missed the mark. Netflix has missed the mark so many times with that, but One Piece came out and it was received pretty well. At least in my opinion, I think they did really well for the live action. It doesn't have to be exactly, but it has to be enough to pass. It has to be passing. And One Piece, in my opinion, is the only one that was passing. I remember watching the Death Note movie and it didn't pass as its own movie. And I'm not saying it has to be perfect in every way, but even as a movie, I was just saying this is a poor quality story writing. The main thing is that this is not entirely about how things look, and I'll get into that later, but the fact that there is nothing added to the stories but everything taken away. It really is just a look, these characters are similar to the ones that you already like, but they're live, and that's it. And oftentimes the stories are adjusted to fit the live action, but the thing with animation though is that it is a space to do what you can't do in the real world. Your jaw can't drop to the ground or your eyes shoot across the room. All of that is lost when you try to make everything live action. In a lot of cases, they'll try to bridge the gap with CGI. And I like to hold CGI in its own distinct place, that it is a form of animation to some extent. It is not animation in the same context that I'm trying to convey in terms of a show. For example, Cats and now Snow White are great examples of why we just don't need that for characters that were originally accepted as non-realistic. Not just animated, but non-realistic. And CGI is not a band-aid, and I also don't think it should be used to make things more and more realistic. I think that's my major problem with CGI. Side note, I am genuinely upset that they're going to try to make a live action of Lilo and Stitch. A lot of the live actions I didn't watch. I didn't watch The Lion King. I did watch Mulan, but you know, I just thought it would be good. It was not. It makes me just really angry with Disney that they're gonna keep trying to do that, and it's not for me. It's just not for me. They are constantly ruining things, and now they're like destroying my nostalgia of the shows and movies that I did like. And just to make something new and good, like I want them to just make something new and good. Just stop being so lazy. Focus on actually contributing to the art and storytelling entertainment business instead of trying to recycle things to make even more CGI versions of the stories that we already loved and accepted. There's no reason for the live actions, in my full opinion. And on top of that, they keep killing the stories and then recycling it and giving it to a whole new generation where that's going to be their nostalgia, a version of a story that's worse than what the actual original story was. My next point is that I feel like there's been a dip in quality for animation and storytelling. There also could be an argument for the push for more lower quality shows that cast a big net. And the first thing that comes to mind is the increase of reality dating shows. No story, all drama, and there's a place for that in the entertainment world, obviously. But there are also could be a point made about how the shows that typically have a lot of quality take the longest to produce. So I do understand, but people are willing to wait. It's mostly, I would say, corporations and everything that aren't willing to wait. With those two factored out, there has been a notable decrease in quality for animations that are rolling out. Of course, animation over time develops, and so do technologies. So comparing shows of the past to now will show a noticeable difference in style and quality. Generally, storytelling has become more devoid of any real value, I feel, and I also feel like the animations that are worth seeing for the quality is something you have to dig up or, try to have recommended to you on Netflix or something. Teen Titans Go is a good example of this. It is a watered down version of what the original show was about. Now, I acknowledge that it is a reimagining of a show with a completely different audience in mind, but I don't think that it's fair to dumb down and relatively degrade the essence of the original show to sell to another generation. At that point, just reboot the old show in all its glory or create a whole new show entirely. Even if the new show smells like the old show, you don't insult people with how much it's fallen from grace. We've had Teen Titans and Young Justice that moved me as a kid and still moves me now as an adult, with compelling storylines and animation and the way that they all connected, and they're both coming of age and also trying to be heroes at the same time. Teen Titans Go really is just bright colors, bold lines, and fart jokes. Completely unserious 100% of the time, which I think makes the story so unimportant when then that's it. And I want to emphasize, I watched it as an adult. I was in college, I think. But I watched it. Don't get me wrong. I am here to watch just a cartoon sometimes. It doesn't have to be super serious, but I mean, just in comparison of what was and what is now, there is a bigger and bigger gap for the younger generation of what they are experiencing now. And that's what I mean. Storytelling and the animations that go alongside it has just been slowly getting worse and worse in meaning, value, and quality, just so the net can be cast bigger and to also accommodate more and more people, because that's what happens, especially with shows that have less need to have thinking or conceptualizing. You get more and more people because it's easier to watch. I could just put it on in the background and just have a couple laughs and then go back to sleep. And I think we need to stop worrying about whether or not it's a cheap laugh or easy to entertain. I think we need something that does a little bit more, gets you thinking a little bit more or feeling a little bit more. My third point is that it's actually the opposite of my second point. Detailing and quality has developed in a way that it almost rivals Studio Ghibli's unique animation and attention to detail. And I said almost. Studio Ghibli, in my opinion, is peak for a reason, because it is a holistic, tied together both storytelling and art, and the way that the art also helps to sell the story while the story is also helping to tell the art. And when it comes to animation now, and this is largely due to 3D modeling, likely the CGI as well, it has gotten a lot more detailed. Yet I am still here to say that animation is art. Animation is primarily art. It started with art. Walt Disney started with drawing and art and trying to show that art and tell a story. Now there's this obsession of making animation and CGI seem more and more realistic that is actually bothering me. especially where they place that. For example, like, I don't want the animation to be real. I am not watching a cartoon because I need it to be real and believable and directly relatable to me and my life, what I'm doing right now. There is no reasonable point, in my opinion, to have such fine details on the hair and clothing of the Incredibles 2 characters when the target audience are people with nostalgia and kids. I get that there's an appreciation of being able to do that, but the kids are going to notice that. And the nostalgia audience is only there because it took 14 years to see a sequel. The animation that takes a step to change the standards are far more interesting to me personally. Like Kipo in the Age of Wonder Beast or Spider-Man in the Multiverse. Kipo was, when it first came out, had a different art style than I was used to, and it just drew me in simply because of the art style. That's not to say that other shows don't have different forms of art styles. I'm just saying that's just one example where I finally saw a different art style and I started watching specifically because of the art style. I almost said wart style. That's where I am right now. When it comes to Spider-Man in the Multiverse, well, we already know that they were going to push the fold in regards to how animation, even the frames of how they put animation together, is different. And it is a beautiful combination that really just changes the way we view what you can do with animation overall. The super quality of some animation completely misses the point of art itself 99% of the time, in my opinion. It's almost comparable to saying that hyper-realistic paintings are better or more preferred than any other style of painting. That is simply not true. It doesn't make any sense. Art is art. If you can do a hyper-realistic painting, congratulations, you are very talented. But it does not make you better than someone who can literally reimagine and recreate reality in front of them and paint that. It's just two different genres and two different spaces. But I feel like they are putting that super realistic as a example of what animation should be doing moving forward, which makes less and less sense to me, especially since, again, Snow White and the gnomes, we shouldn't have done that. We, as in Disney, they should not have done that. I don't know what a better alternative, actually a better alternative would literally to have been adding the cartoon animations into the story, because there have been films with that where it's live action and then cartoons. Who Killed Roger Rabbit, or that other princess movie that I'm forgetting about where she was animated, then she live action and then animated again. It's far better to just literally clash them at that point, especially as a Disney movie, than to have the gnomes. All right, so for my fourth point, a lot of cartoons are made with children in mind, and I'm no child psychologist, so I can only speak about my experience and the experience of those who have shared in the past. Animation has allowed me to have the same level of cognitive freedom as reading has. First, it allowed me to see examples or people dynamics and situations play out without me having to experience them directly. Seeing a character go through struggles and overcome it, or show me a way out of a sticky situation I had never thought of, were the best moments for me. It was the most inspiring moments for me. The reason why is because of how dramatic and exaggerated the cartoons and anime were. I can't tell you how many times as a kid I got confused by an actor or actress crying in a movie while looking like they were smiling. If it were animated, the tears would be shooting out of their eyes and their faces would be droopy. It would directly show what sadness is. This is to say that it is far easier to convey emotions with animation. It's also far easier to tell a story with animation because you can take liberties with breaking the reality. I can accept a character getting hurt and pressing on anyway than an actual person breaking their bone in real life. Sometimes being too real just puts me in survival mode, or sometimes it's just too fake and I just can't take anything seriously if it were in the live action format. This isn't to say that I had to be taught how to read emotions directly from cartoons. I obviously learned from life and everything, but it is a way to simulate reality, concepts, character, values, and everything easier than just living your everyday life. It gives you a place to develop perspective, develop the ability to have perspective. What this did for me growing up is allow me to learn lessons and develop a character that was aligned with my values because I was able to learn how to conceptualize it. There are many people who seem to struggle with imagining things or putting concepts together in their mind because they can't seem to have that sort of simulation in their minds. I truly think that animation helps with being able to develop the skill to simulate in your own mind. Because for a kid, it's like playing. It's a mental exercise, which is why good animation paired with good storytelling can be so influential. There are animated characters who were likely role models for kids as well. When there wasn't an example of a person or scenario in life, that show can fill the role for them. The simulation and play of animation helps to build a reference for how to approach something generally that you may not have had to encounter in your entire life. I've seen a whole video about how many young boys really gravitated towards Dragon Ball Z as a source of male figures, whether it be fathers, brothers, or just someone to look up to as a way to strive for achievement in life, who they wanted to grow up to be, or who they needed in their moments of need as well. No, they don't necessarily replace the people in your life, and no, the kids didn't really grow up having superpowers necessarily, but many or some of the many have learned what it means to protect someone and what it means to have the courage to stand up for themselves, or what it means to actually strive for your goals, to fulfill those needs that you have that you value for yourself. It's far easier to understand that struggle and see it play out as a kid than it is to be told at 10 years old that you need to grow up and be a strong, rich man with a wife and kids. One is trying to help build a character and values, while the other is assigning societal obligations. My fifth point is that animation plays a huge role for adults as well, obviously. It plays the same role for kids in a way in terms of simulating and being able to mentally conceptualize different emotions and values. I would say a lot of adults are more prone to projecting or being able to vicariously live through characters that they see, whether it be live action or a cartoon, in my full opinion. But by the end of the day, it's a source of entertainment. However, I think animation can do a lot more for adults who appreciate storytelling. Most anything made for children has to have boundaries on what you get to talk about, how you talk about it, and how you convey it. It's gotten a lot more regulations than in the past. Most anything made for children needs those boundaries, and it is far more sensitive for them to be introduced to topics in a regulated way. For adults, it's pretty much a free-for-all as long as they get the green light. I swear it is. Sausage Party literally exists. It lends to the need to creatively express and simulate, but also stimulate as well. I don't have a measure of how many animated shows were created for adults, but I do know the impact. The shows are things many kids grew up on, which you weren't technically supposed to watch those as a kid, but when you start getting the jokes and understanding the real story and motivations behind characters, it really can make the show even better. One could also argue that it helps kids to understand the adult world in an exaggerated, safer way. For the shows that stray away from purely adult comedy and debauchery, I feel like we're able to see the full expression of the creator in its entirety. Conveying a story with all of the necessary emotional and visual stimulation needed to captivate an audience can be so difficult. It's another reason why I feel like there's nothing to watch. An actor's live action set could disrupt a story far greater than an animated show can. Not to say that all animated shows are perfect. In a space of storytelling, the animated visual coupled with a story writing with an older audience in mind is far more appreciated, in my opinion. It is no longer about the skill of an actor or set designer. We don't have to worry about matching lighting to the green screen. We don't have to worry about time or physics. An animated show can show everything and nothing. The range of animation is first dependent on the imagination of those who are trying to tell the story. Point 6. The reason why animation has taken a hit is because of capitalism, obviously. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm talking about animation in the US only, and not anywhere else. I'm just talking about here, what's being made here. And many shows have been canceled because ratings were perceived to be too low. Animation studios like Cartoon Network were placed in the hands of people who don't care about animation, storytelling, or entertainment. The industry of animators and writers have been screwed over to the point that there were various protests and ideas stolen throughout the entire years. Treasure Planet is an example of a show that had behind the scenes drama that caused it to not have the advertisement it deserved despite being an amazing film. It's one of my favorite films out there. I literally wanted to be a space pirate when I grew up. I just didn't care about Pirates in the Caribbean the way I cared about Treasure Planet pirates, I'm telling you. Space pirates are just, they were awesome. They still are. We live in a space where we have to question if something is AI or if the animators were paid well for all their hard work. Overworked and underpaid for a show that may get canceled in the midst of being created because it isn't selling enough toys or isn't getting enough eyes on it. And we all know that animation is a labor of love, a labor that people are clearly willing to wait for. Yet, animated shows are less likely to get greenlit or additional seasons. At least, that's what I've gathered. I have not looked at any specific statistics. This is really just about what I have been seeing personally from my little perspective of the world. And I know it does cost a lot to make animated shows, especially since the greatest measure of success for animated shows are ratings and how much merchandise is bought. I would also like to mention for a lot of animated shows that I don't see merchandise made a lot or advertised a lot or put in a position to be bought as compared to just about everything else. So I think it will be like the ratings that will be more important than the merchandise bought behind it. For example, when it comes to anime, there's always some form of merchandise to sell to incorporate for events and advertising. They, I think, lease out characters to be used in other places. I think One Piece just had a debut at the Lakers game. At the very least, there's usually a manga to go along with the animated show. Now, I will acknowledge that it's because a lot of time the manga comes first, then the manga and its popularity gets picked up and then turns into a show, which can save a lot of money generally speaking because you have an audience already who's willing to look and invest into the show. So it's not like I don't understand the business model behind it, but we don't have that here. It's not like we are a society that really likes graphic novels and mangas to the point that we have an entire industry pipeline for that 99% of the time. A lot of these animated shows are starting off as animations. They are being piloted, they are being tested out. So there's a lot more investment financially and time and labor put in first for something that doesn't have a base. So I do acknowledge that those are two different spaces, but it does contribute to the fact that if a show doesn't get the ratings because no one knows about it, then there's nothing else. And you can't really sell anything alongside of it because it will cost too much money for an audience that may not even be there. The other contributing factor is the course of rushing animators and paying them less because it doesn't help either. Decreasing the quality of the work environment doesn't help to make a better quality show. So I think there are a lot of animated shows that miss the mark because of the lack of quality or the lack of advertisement, generally speaking, in the business world. It leaves stories unfinished or feeling incomplete. So many of the animated shows that I do watch are not created in the US. Obviously, the great majority of that being anime. then surprisingly, there are a lot of shows that may have been written in the US or have a joint US creation, but also have been animated in studios outside of the US. It's likely due to outsourcing, whether it's for the whole show or expanding the show's labor force. This, I feel, adds to the fact that there are less expectations with US based animation compared to what international studios can do for us to help pick up the slack, because their animation studios may have a lot more to be able to contribute to our quality of animation that we can't seem to do in-house in the US. This is not to say I'm against outsourcing. I'm saying we just cannot seem to rely on US based animation the same way we can for international studios. Then again, is that issue with AI coming into the scene. Both animation and live action are now on the line because studios may genuinely think that using AI for the purposes of creating art is what's going to help cut costs and make things go faster. And I don't want to just say studios, I mean business. I mean people who genuinely think as a businessman that if you just use AI, it'll help expedite things and help be able to create things without having to pay more people for the labor and the cost of being able to create the stories together. It's just not what AI is. AI is supposed to be a tool to help expedite processes, sure, but it is not there to replace people entirely. And if you have people to manage AI, but do not have people to be creative, it's not going to be a good luck overall. And I'm not saying every industry is doing that. I'm not even saying they're doing that at all. I'm just saying that if you're going to keep lowering the quality, but then also think AI is going to be a good fix, it's just not going to be. And apparently AI is super expensive anyway. It takes a lot of money and water just to run. Yet now it's pretty much integrated in most everything. So everything needs to be double, triple checked at this point to see its accuracy, while it's also still learning at the same time. And then you have the fact that AI can only create the approximations of a concept you have. So it's never going to be exactly what you wanted it to be if you had just done it yourself. Rather, it's just going to be what the machine thinks you want by putting all the things together. So it's just a weird fantasy that some people have to integrate technology to replace human expression and meaning. And it's getting weird. It's getting weird to me. Like, you're trying to strip the soul of art through technology so you can make things faster. What people have been trying to do with technology is really starting to concern me. I've seen that floating picture of a robot holding a fetus. I've seen people make the case of having robots do essentially everything for you. Or if you think about Ready Player One, living in a simulation, because it's far more fun to live in your mind than it is to live in real life. And I'm just saying that at this point, this is a cry for help from humanity, that we are not living lives the way we want to. We are far more exhausted to live our own lives. Like, it's weird to me. Unless you have a valid reason, by the way. I'm full support of technology, AI, to be a tool to bridge a gap, to be there to support, but not replace. That's where I am. Technology is for support, not to replace. Point 7. Recently, Disney went in on this need to fix past animated shows by making them more culturally correct or politically correct, or changing the ethnicity of the protagonist, or I guess you could say allowing for more diversity. And I won't say that that's the biggest issue, but I will dive into that a little bit deeper. So making things culturally and politically correct is always very important. It really shouldn't have been incorrect in the first place. But I think this plays a role in the transition to live action as well. Yet it all has its own cost. The live actions that were supposedly fixed may have an impact on the storyline that the writers and producers never fixed, or of which I think is absolutely worse, misattributing reimaginings, interpretations, and inclusion to be substitution and planted race washing. It's not like I don't understand the point made by many who say the original character was one ethnicity, so why are you changing it now? Try not to get lost when I explain this. First, I must introduce the word intersectionality. Intersectionality is a sociological analytical framework for understanding how groups and individuals' social and political identities result in unique combinations of discrimination and privilege. So, with this framework in mind, understand that two things that seem unrelated can not only be related but also happening at the same time. On one hand, people make the point of preserving the artistic interpretation of the original story where it originates from. Yet, Disney took these stories and made them their own versions anyway and are simultaneously changing the stories for the live actions. So even if there were a case to say that a mermaid that doesn't exist technically and is not based necessarily on a real person from the past must match the original protagonist's level of melanin, does not then mean that every iteration of this character that's made has to be exactly that. Yet, in the same vein, if you were to take Mulan, Moana, Tiana, Jasmine, and change them to have another ethnic background without explanation, it would then impact the story and setting that takes place. Moana is based on Polynesian mythology. Mulan is based off of real woman and or legend of a woman from China. Jasmine is based on a princess from Middle Eastern folklore. Tiana is actually based on a late New Orleans chef, Leah Chase. The stories that I preferred growing up are more culturally rich and tied to specific foundations of origin. It's also why there was a need to make corrections. Their ethnic backgrounds contribute to the story and setting of where they are. To those who say the same for things like Snow White, you'd be correct to some level. It is of German origin, I acknowledge that. However, we don't live in a world that has been open to retaining origins, have we? Most everything that is advertised for is, let's be honest, primarily white. White has become the default. So since it's been that way for a long time, we are in a period where it is still a fight to have more diversity in animation and creation. If it still confuses you or maybe even frustrates you, I would just say look up the Daughters of the Confederacy and understand this is how intersectionality plays. So on one hand, yes, taking a white character and making them a different ethnic background, especially when they're the protagonist, actually helps to create characters be more relatable, diverse, and actually shows that you care about more perspectives than just the one, because you'll be able to see someone. There are black people in Germany. Fun fact. Even though the person who plays Snow White is Hispanic, I know, but like it's just making that point. But then also at the same time, if you were to take a character of a minority's background who is a protagonist like Princess Tiana and make them white, it then is a reaffirming form of that need for both whitewashing and the white default for most everything in entertainment. It goes both ways. If you say it shouldn't go both ways, that's not how it works. That is exactly how it works. Those are both true things right there. One is a form of discrimination and one is a form of privilege. That's just a reality that has happened, especially because of the history of how things have come to this point. All this is to say that minorities in the US need more representation in the entertainment and animated space. Now, do they need to replace what's already been made? No, I don't think so, actually. I don't know why that's a thing. Just make new characters. Make new stories. Make new art. In my full opinion, I don't get anything out of The Little Mermaid being black. But I know the little girl who is going to go watch it, who looks like me, who is, with the same skin tone, even darker perhaps, is going to enjoy being a mermaid or seeing herself on the screen. I know the value of that, but I do not think it needs to be in the same vein of let's recreate it completely different. So yes, I have two different arguments for this. I know why it's happening and I know the value, but at the same time, I don't think it actually contributes anything, because Disney is just trying to recycle something else to say, okay, now it's your turn. It makes no sense to me. It's almost, in my opinion, taking away from all minorities to say, now you get to be the princess this time around. And it's weird to me that that is not clearly defined, because on one hand, the conflict I have is that on one hand, I'm glad that there's diversity and there's not going to be any sort of obstacle for those who want to act and play that role. But on the other hand, you're not actually contributing to the need for diversity or even storytelling. There's been like 50 million different types of Cinderella stories from various different backgrounds because they focused on the story. What is the story of Cinderella? It is a girl who is in a situation where their stepmother is bad and she is treated poorly, and she has a couple of older sisters, and one day she finds a prince. That's the story. There have been so many different versions of it because people stuck to the story. Princess Tiana even is a rags to riches sort of story, but in the realm of becoming a princess. So the story itself can be redone, reimagined, and doing all that. But the need to take what was already made and then just say, we're going to do it again, has been fumbled, especially by Disney. So, yes, I made the point earlier about the intersectionality of things, but it does lend to the fact that their storytelling is ass, and the way that they're presenting things is ass. It is just bad. It's bad. It's bad. And you can prefer the original live action or the original animation of Snow White, where she is white, and say that makes more sense and is of the German background, and you like the origin of the story. I actually have no problem of it because you are hinting at the folklore. Now, if you're saying you prefer the other one and you're going like, why is she Hispanic now? And that's your major issue. Well, yeah, I just feel like, I don't know. It's absolutely saying that there's a clear lack of ideas and art and quality while you're also trying to recycle and make live actions just so you can grab another generation and maybe just a bigger pool potentially. Because the thing is that yes, you're going to get all audiences, all kids is running in there, but I think it's almost insulting that you would, and don't you want to go see her because she's now the Black Mermaid? It's just like, where is our designated story then? You know what I'm saying? Like it, like even when Velma was reimagined as like, was she black? Like they were supposed to be black, right? Yeah, I don't know why I got the confused in my head. It kind of was insulting because it was like, why would you do that? Create a new character at that point. Like, why would you think you need to make a whole cast black now? It's so stupid. And if we keep doing this, it's going to turn into blackwashing. And that is the most insane level of bullshit marketed as diversity I have ever seen in my life. Because then again, you come to disappoint and let me know you still don't know what the problem is and that you're going to miss the point and mark every time. I have not watched that show. It is irritating me. I also couldn't finish watching The Little Mermaid. There was too much singing. I was over it. You made it to the end. I'm so proud of you. I want you to stay gorgeous. Just know that you're worth it and live out of spite. Okay. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And okay, bye.